The rain came down in sheets the morning Josie Brant ran. She'd shed her name, her veil, and the weight of expectation in one breathless sprint through the garden behind the Harmon estate. The hem of her wedding gown caught briars, tearing silk like flesh. Her boots, borrowed from a stable hand she'd bribed with a kiss and a silver ring, clapped hard against mud. Her chest burned. Every step was a prayer not to be seen, not to be caught. The white dress trailed like a ghost behind her, ragged and soaking. The train station at Little Sundown was 10 miles west, and she meant to reach it before nightfall. The man waiting at the altar, Clayton Harmon III, was 45 and cruel. He called her girl, even when she'd bled for the first time on his estate. He called her sweet dove when she flinched from his hands. Their marriage was a transaction, no more, a dowry in land, cattle, and silence. Her father's signature sealed it, her mother's grave endorsed it, but Josie had no intention of saying yes. What she did intend, she hadn't yet decided. By dusk, her hands were blistered and shaking. Her dress was nearly gone. She climbed into the back of a freight wagon heading north, bribed the driver with her pearl earrings, and told him her name was Sarah. He didn't ask why she was alone or barefoot or shivering. "Not my business," he said. "Just don't bleed on the canvas. It's gunpowder I'm hauling." She rode all night, and the next town was dust when she arrived, Greer's Hollow, the end of the known county. There were only 3 buildings with roofs, 1 jail, and a saloon whose sign hung by 1 nail. That's where she saw the poster. It was tacked to the hitching post beside a restless black mare. Ink bled slightly in the heat, but the words were still clear. Wife wanted. No questions. Must work. Prefer silent type. Beneath it, a name, Ransom Holt. She knew the name. Everyone did, from Abilene to Yuma. He was the son of a gunfighter and a whore, orphaned at 11, raised on dirt and vengeance. Rumor said he shot 3 men in a cardroom at 16, rode with Quantrill's raiders, then vanished after the war into the New Mexico Badlands. Came back rich, bought a ranch so big it needed its own sheriff. Holt River Holdings, they called it, somewhere between frontier legend and breathing myth. Now he was advertising for a bride. She tore the poster down, folded it twice, and walked straight into the saloon. There were 6 men inside. Only one looked up when she entered. He sat alone, dark hat shadowing his face, glass in hand. She knew it was him before he moved, knew by the way he didn't bother pretending to be surprised by her. "You Ransom Holt?" she asked. He raised his eyes. They were gray, not the kind of gray that shifted like sky. The kind of gray that stayed, stonebound and calm like the bottom of a well. "I am," he said. She stepped closer. Every man in the room was staring now. She ignored them. "I'll take the offer, no questions." He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "What's your name?" "Does it matter?" His mouth twitched. It wasn't a smile. "Only if you want me to remember it." She paused, then said, "Call me Josie." He looked at her like he already had. And that was how she bought the most feared man west of the Pecos. The wedding happened before sunrise in the preacher's shack. No guests, no paper, just a nod and a ring made of iron. Ransom said nothing. Josie repeated the vows. The preacher looked ready to faint from the tension in the room, but pronounced them married all the same. "You'll come with me," Ransom said after. "Now." The ride to his ranch took 2 days. He gave her a blanket, a rifle, and a canteen. Nothing more. They didn't speak much. He was like a wall, tall, immovable, full of scars and secrets. But he didn't leer, didn't touch her, didn't even look too long. At night, he slept facing away from the fire. Josie sat with the rifle cradled in her lap, listening for hoofbeats that didn't come. She didn't tell him she was running. Didn't tell him about Clayton or the estate or the reward that would likely double with every passing week. She didn't say she had never meant to get married at all. She certainly didn't tell him the truth, that she'd seen him once before, 3 years ago, when he came to her father's estate to collect a debt. That she'd seen his face, still blood-stained, his coat torn and wet from riding, and that something inside her had remembered it even now. When they reached Holt River, she saw the land before she saw the house. A valley of broken rock and wild grass, scattered with cattle. A house the size of a courthouse rose in the distance, surrounded by barns and men on horseback. He dismounted and handed her the reins. "This is yours now," he said. She didn't answer. She was watching him, this man she'd married without love, without reason, without right. And she did not yet know the most dangerous thing of all: he already loved her. The ranch hands didn't ask questions, but they watched her like hawks. She was too clean, too quiet, too pale for a place like Holt River. She didn't wear lace anymore. Ransom had handed her a bundle of work clothes and a pair of worn boots the first night, said nothing about the dress. She burned it behind the stable, watched silk shrivel black in the wind. In the days that followed, Josie learned how to gut a chicken, saddle a horse, and patch a bullet tear in a shirt without flinching. The cook, Mags, gave her a cot by the stove and a plate of beans when no one else would. The stable boy, Cal, all bone and soot and silent kindness, showed her which horses spooked and which ones wouldn't buck if she mounted them wrong. But it was Ransom she watched the most. He left before dawn each day, returned after dusk, never explained where he'd gone. His hands were always dirty, his eyes always scanning the horizon like it owed him something. He slept in a separate room on the far side of the house, behind a door that never opened. He didn't ask why she'd come. She didn't offer it. A month passed. The rains came late that year. Cattle thinned along the southern fence, and 2 drifters were found strung from cottonwoods by their heels, shot clean through the mouth. No one said it, but everyone knew Ransom had done it. Josie wasn't afraid of him. She wasn't sure what she was. One night she wandered out past the creek with a lantern, following the sound of hoofbeats. Ransom was out there, bareheaded, bridle loose in one hand, leading a broken gelding across the stream. She didn't speak, just watched. He didn't look at her when he said, "You're not what I expected." She stepped forward. "What do you expect?" "Someone running from the law." She hesitated. "I am." He nodded, slow, like that fit into some private truth he'd already decided on. "You bury your secrets well," he said. "Better than a man buries bodies." For the first time he smiled, small, tired, without cruelty. "I don't bury men," he said. "I leave them to the birds." The air between them shifted then, not soft, but clearer. He didn't speak again. She stood beside him in silence, the horse trembling between them. When they walked back, he handed her the lantern. Their fingers brushed. She felt the callus of his palm, the quiet restraint in how quickly he let go. Word spread slow in the territories, but not slow enough. By the start of winter, a bounty poster turned up in the general store at Dead Willow Junction. $500 for the safe return of Josephine Brandt, last seen fleeing her wedding to Clayton Harmon, III. She was called unstable, hysterical, possibly abducted. The poster named her a girl, not a woman. It said nothing of the bruises. Josie saw the copy when she rode in for salt and flour. She stood at the counter while the shopkeep made change and stared at the sketch of her own face, twisted in charcoal to look lost and pale. She folded it, tucked it inside her coat, and rode back faster than she'd come. That night she sat on the porch long after the others had turned in. Ransom came up behind her, boots soft on wood. "You saw it?" he asked. She nodded. "I figured," he said. "They're offering 600 now." She turned. "You're keeping track." "I keep track of every price put on something I own." Her heart froze at the word. Own. She stood, stepping back. "I'm not property." His jaw shifted, not regret, adjustment. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" His eyes didn't flinch from hers. I meant I wouldn't sell you. She stared at him a long time, then slowly her voice dropped to a hush. You could turn me in, take the reward. Make your name shine. I've already got blood on my name, he said. Shine doesn't stick. They stood in the dark, the wind picking up off the bluff behind them. She stepped closer. Why'd you put up that poster then? Why buy a wife? He looked at her as if she were missing the simplest part of the story. I wasn't buying one. She shook her head. The words said wife wanted. They didn't say for what. She didn't move. Ransom leaned against the rail, gaze fixed outward. I've got enemies who like to cut throats in the night, men I've wronged, families that remember. The ranch needed a name at the house, a woman's shape in the window. It keeps certain men from coming too close. So I'm a scarecrow, she said. No, his voice darkened. You're the trap. She felt the breath catch in her chest, cold curled under her skin. And what if they come anyway? She asked. Ransom turned then, fully, slowly. They already have. The first man came 2 weeks later. Didn't wear a badge, but had the look of a hired gun, flat eyes, slicked hair, coat too neat for the trail. He asked to speak with Mrs. Holt. Josie stood in the doorway of the bunkhouse, apron stained, knife still in hand. She didn't flinch. I hear you're someone's daughter, he said, voice oily. I'm someone's wife, she replied. He smiled without humor, but not Harmon's. I think you should leave. Your daddy, offering a full pardon and 2,000 in gold. She smiled then, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. I'm not for sale. He stepped forward, one hand near his belt. A bullet split the air beside his boot. Ransom stood 50 feet off, rifle steady, one eye shut. Step again, and I'll make you limp the rest of your life, he called. The man spat in the dust, backed up, and rode off. Josie watched until the dust settled. Then, slowly, she turned to Ransom. You always watching? Only when I'm worried, he said. What are you worried about? He didn't answer. But that night, for the first time, she heard him stand outside her door long after everyone else had gone to sleep. He never knocked, but he stayed. The frost came early that year. By mid-November, the land was bone-white at dawn and bitter by nightfall. Snow crusted the window panes, and the cattle moved slower, eyes dull with cold. Josie rose before light and slept after dark, her fingers cracked from washing and mending, her legs sore from the walk to the river and back. But the ache made sense. It reminded her she was living her own life now, not one stitched together by other men's wants. She never called it home, not out loud, but her steps grew sure around the house. She learned where the wind came through the porch floorboards, which lanterns smoked worst, which door creaked when Ransom paced past her room. She learned the names of every ranch hand, even the ones too proud to offer them first. Ransom kept his distance. He watched her like he watched the herd, quiet, constant, deliberate, but he never touched her. Not even when she brushed past him at the fire or brought him coffee in the cold. His hand stayed by his sides, always polite, always clenched. And that restraint, she realized, was what made her feel safest of all. Still, something in her was shifting. The days moved, and he began to feel less like a stranger and more like a shadow she'd forgotten she'd grown used to. One morning, she found a box beside the stove. Inside was a revolver, clean, well-balanced, ivory-handled. A note beneath it read, "In case I'm not there." No name, no signature, just that. She didn't ask if it was a gift or a warning. She just began carrying it under her coat. Trouble returned in December, not as a man, but as a letter. It came folded in halves, sealed with wax too fine for the territories. Ransom read it at the table, eyes moving slow, jaw hardening line by line. When he looked up, Josie knew something had cracked open. Clayton Harmon is offering more than gold now, he said. He's offering legal authority. Sheriff from North Fork's been deputized to find you. Her breath caught. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Then I'll run again. No, he said, you won't. She stared at him. I won't let you. His voice was low, but it cut deeper than a shout. I made a promise when I took you in, he said. You're under my roof. That means something, even now. She wanted to speak, to say you don't know what that man is capable of, but the words caught behind memory. Her mouth closed. That night she packed a bag anyway. She didn't run, but she made sure she could. The sheriff came on a gray horse with a tin star and a preacher's mouth, rode into the yard as if he owned every mile behind him. Ransom Holt, he called. We've got cause to speak. Ransom met him at the fence. No greeting, no smile. Josie stayed on the porch, apron still wet, hands at her sides. I've got orders from the governor, the sheriff said. Legal warrant for the recovery of one Josephine Brandt. She ain't here. You sure about that? I'm sure of my land. The sheriff dismounted, slow. Glanced past Ransom to the porch, eyes narrowed. I've got cause to search. You don't, Ransom said. Not unless you want a bloodletting in the snow. The sheriff studied him, measured his silence, then tipped his hat. You're protecting a fugitive. Ransom didn't flinch. She's my wife. Marriage don't wipe crimes. Ransom's voice dropped. Neither does power. The sheriff turned to Josie then. She hadn't moved. You come quiet, he said, and you'll be safe. Refuse, and you'll make things worse than they have to be. She stepped down from the porch. Every eye on the ranch was watching. Men stood beside posts, one hand on iron, the other near rope. She walked until she stood beside Ransom. Then she said, clear and certain, I'm not leaving with you. She's got a right to stay, Ransom said. Not once I prove she was taken against her will. Josie smiled. It was small, bitter, unafraid. You try to take me, she said, and you'll prove who the real criminal is. The sheriff looked between them. He saw it then, not fear, not a woman bought and bound, but something else. Something that couldn't be undone by law. He rode off without another word. That night Ransom didn't sleep outside her door. He opened it. He stood in the frame for a long time. You almost left, he said. I didn't. I wouldn't stop you if you had. She looked at him. Yes. You would have. And then, finally, he stepped in. He didn't touch her, not yet. He just knelt beside her cot and said the first thing she hadn't expected to hear since the day she ran. I loved you before I knew your name. And she said, I loved you before I knew I could. The thaw came hard in the new year. Snow turned to mud. Riverbanks swelled and broke their edges. The cattle slipped in the muck, and 3 foals died from cold lung before the wind calmed. Josie didn't notice the season change so much as she noticed how quiet it had become between her and Ransom. Not empty, just still. Like a drawn breath between storms. He didn't speak of the night he knelt beside her, didn't speak of love. But something passed between them in glances, in the way his hand brushed her waist when he stepped around her in the hall. In the way she no longer flinched when he passed too close. They moved like they'd been doing it for years, him loading feed, her mending saddle straps, both knowing what the other would reach for before they did. She felt it even when he was gone, and he was gone more often now. He rode north sometimes, past the boundary fences, into county land no one claimed, said nothing when he left, said less when he returned. But Josie saw the weight in his shoulders when he came back. His coat dusted in ash once, shirt torn another time, a bloodstain just above his hip. He wouldn't speak of it. She didn't ask, not directly. One night when she was cleaning the rifle he'd given her, she found a note tucked behind the barrel. Not his handwriting. Sharp slashes and crooked vowels. Harmon's men seen in SILVRBURN, 3 riding to kill. She burned the note in the fire and waited. Ransom came in after midnight. She didn't speak until he sat. Is it true? His eyes were dark from writing. Yes. She swallowed. Are they coming for you? For us. He unbuckled his holster, set it down. I don't want you caught in this, he said. You bought me, she said. I'm part of the damn bill now. That made him look up. His voice was low. I never meant to buy you. I know. I just wanted to keep you close. For a while. Josie folded her arms. And now? Now I'd burn this whole county before I let anyone take you. He stood, walked toward the window. The night outside was still, too still. You should sleep, he said. She didn't move. I won't sleep until you promise you'll tell me next time. He turned, promise you'll stay if I do. She met his eyes. I'll stay. The first attack didn't come in the form of bullets. It came in fire. They torched the west barn just past the bluff where the calves were kept, lit it with oil and bone-dry hay. The smoke woke her first. Ransom was already out the door by the time she grabbed the pistol from under her bed. Men shouted. Hooves thundered. She ran through the yard barefoot, gun in hand, smoke stinging her eyes. She found Ransom by the burning wall, rifle raised. One man already lay still beside the fence, blood soaking the dirt around him. Another was limping for cover, shoulder torn. Josie didn't hesitate. She lifted her pistol and fired once. The second man dropped like a sack of wheat. Ransom turned. Their eyes met in the firelight. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. They buried 2 men behind the stable. Ransom said they were Harmon's best, just bait. The real ones would come soon enough. The ranch quieted again, too quiet. Ransom called a meeting with his men. Half were willing to stay. The others scattered, coin in their pockets, fear in their eyes. Josie didn't blame them. Ransom gave her a saddlebag with food, gold, and a map. If I don't come back one night, you take this and ride east. She stared at him. No, it's not a request. Then don't leave me something to refuse. She turned, walked out. Later in the barn, he found her cinching her mare's bridle. He didn't argue. He just said, if we're going to war, you ride beside me. They made camp 2 miles from the Harmon line. Ransom knew the old trails, where the dry creek split the scrub, where the riflemen might set up if they were smart. He said Clayton hired men like chess pieces, sharp but not clever. He said Josie would know when the real Harmon arrived, because he wouldn't shoot. He'd talk first, try to barter like a man used to owning people. That night they sat by a low fire under the twisted branches of a juniper. She leaned against a rock. He cleaned his knife. I used to think revenge was fire, he said. She looked at him. What changed? I met you. Turns out it's colder than I thought. Josie said nothing, but she knew what he meant. You don't burn the world for someone you hate. You freeze it for someone you love. You make it so nothing moves until they're safe again. She reached for his hand. He let her take it. And in that stillness, with wind slicing across the ridge and the scent of ash thick in the air, she said the only thing left to say. When this ends, I don't want to run any more. And he said, then we'll bury the ones chasing us. She believed him, because for the first time since she fled that estate, she didn't feel hunted. She felt like a hunter. Dawn broke sharp and red over the ridgeline, the kind of red that spoke of blood before breakfast. They didn't ride back to Holt River. Ransom said the ranch was bait now, nothing more than a stage set for ambush. If Harmon meant to draw them out, he'd have to try harder. Instead, they went south, toward the salt flats where no trees grew and no law came. Josie counted 7 in their party. 4 men Ransom trusted with his name, 1 teenager too eager to die, and Mags, who had insisted on coming with a rifle older than most graves and the look of someone who'd buried worse than Harmon in her time. "Every man thinks a woman can't shoot until he's dead," Mags said, chewing licorice as she loaded her gun. "And even then, he doubts it." Josie liked her more every hour. They slept rough. They hunted their food. Ransom shared a tent with no one, but he'd taken to walking the perimeter before he slept, and Josie knew those footsteps now the way some women knew prayers. She no longer checked for his absence. She expected him. But the attack didn't come in the flats. It came in the pass. They were moving through a cleft between 2 worn hills, dry rock and scrub all around when the bullets started. No shout, no warning, just laid, hot and close. The boy was the first to fall, Cal, with his chest opened like a door. Josie saw him fall sideways off his horse, arms still holding the reins as if he hadn't realized he was already dead. Ransom shouted once. Then he rode into the fire like a man who didn't believe in dying. Josie followed. She didn't remember aiming, just the sound. The way her pistol kicked, the weight of her own scream rising in her throat as she saw one of Harmon's men lunge toward Mags with a knife. She shot him twice. He dropped. Mags stood over him a moment later and put another round in his skull. When the dust cleared, 3 of Ransom's men were down. 1 groaned, gut-shot and begging. The others didn't make a sound. There were 4 bodies. The dead stayed where they fell. Ransom didn't bury them that night. He said the coyotes would strip the bones clean by morning, and any cross placed out here would only draw vultures. Josie didn't argue. She only stood by Cal's horse, now riderless, reins dragging, and tried not to cry in front of men who needed to believe she was still flame. When the sun dropped behind the pass, they made camp deeper in the gorge, shielded by rock and grief. Mags built a fire low to the ground, wrapped her coat around the youngest survivor, a man with blood in his teeth and no words left in him. Ransom didn't eat. He sharpened his knife in the dark, dragging steel over whetstone with a rhythm Josie couldn't stop hearing. She sat beside him when the fire burned low. "How many more?" she asked. He didn't answer. She leaned in closer. "Don't lie." He looked up, eyes shadowed by the night. 3 men from Harmon's personal guard still breathe, he said. And Harmon himself. That's all. That's enough. He paused. He's smart. He'll try to parley next. Josie stared into the fire. Then don't let him. They met in the ash fields the next morning. Ransom sent word by a passing cattle hand, told Harmon to ride alone if he wanted to talk. Josie waited near the bluff, rifle tucked beneath her shawl, finger resting on the trigger like a hymn. She watched him come. Clayton Harmon rode like he owned the dirt under his horse. Broad-shouldered, silver buttons on his coat gleaming like teeth. He hadn't aged much, still kept that same smug bend to his mouth. But his eyes were colder now, lined from searching. She doubted he'd slept easy in months. He dismounted 10 paces from Ransom. "You've cost me a great deal," Harmon said. Ransom said nothing. 3 men dead, 2 more vanished. "And that girl, she was mine by contract." Josie stepped from behind the rocks. "No, Clayton," she said. "I was yours by threat." His face didn't change. "I should have put you in a cage." "You tried." He looked at Ransom then. "You think you've saved her. You think taking her makes you a man of honor." Ransom's voice came low, measured. "I think it makes me hers." A flicker of surprise passed over Harmon's face, then something darker. "You're both dead," he said. "Then kill us." Ransom spread his arms, no gun drawn, no fear in his stance. Josie kept hers raised, aimed at Harmon's chest. He looked between them, jaw tight. "You'd kill me in cold blood?" he asked her. "No," Josie said. "But I'd bury you warm." She fired, the bullet clipped his shoulder, spinning him back into the dirt. He screamed, dropped to his knees. Ransom stepped forward, gun drawn now, calm as winter. "Run," he said. "And keep running." Harmon looked up, blood on his teeth. "You'll regret this." "No," Josie said, "but you will." He crawled to his horse, mounted lopsided, and rode off with the speed of a coward who'd tasted his first wound. They didn't chase him. They didn't need to. He wouldn't recover from that. They burned their dead that night, built a pyre from juniper and old fencewood. No words were said. Only silence and the crack of fire as names slipped into ash. After, Ransom found Josie alone behind the creek, staring out toward the low sky. "You could still leave," he said, "if you wanted." She turned, slow. "I'm not afraid of Harmon anymore." "I wasn't talking about him." He stepped closer, looked down at the mud on her boots, the blood crusted under her fingernails. "You didn't sign up for this," he said. "I didn't sign anything," she replied. "I just walked into a saloon and asked if you were Ransom Holt." His eyes locked on hers. "Why?" She let the silence stretch. Then she said, "Because I'd seen you once before, when I was still a girl." He stiffened. "My father owed you," she said. "You came to collect. I watched from the stairs." She stepped closer. "You were younger, wounded. You didn't beg for anything. You just waited until he paid. And then you walked away, like there was still some part of you that hadn't been ruined by all of it." He stared at her. Every part of him still. "And I thought," she said, voice soft now, "if there's a man like that left in this world, I'll find him again." Ransom didn't speak, but he reached for her then, one hand to her cheek. And when she leaned into it, he kissed her, slow, sure, no fury, no fire, just warmth, like thaw after the longest winter. Spring returned like it was owed. The land softened, the river unthawed. Grass rose up green again between broken fences, and for the first time in memory, the house at Holt River felt like something more than a stronghold. It felt like a place where silence didn't mean fear. Where watching the horizon wasn't about waiting for the worst, but simply knowing where you'd come from. Josie hadn't unpacked her old bag. It still sat beneath the bed, rolled tight, saddle-worn, full of what she once needed to run. But she hadn't touched it in weeks. There was a scar on her collarbone now, where a bullet had grazed her during the past fight. And another on her palm, from a splintered board she'd gripped too hard during the standoff in the ash fields. She liked them not for the pain, but for the proof. She had survived a world that wanted to name her someone else, and she was no one's runaway anymore. She was Josie Holt, not by law, not by branding, by blood earned. Clayton Harmon didn't return. Word came quiet and slow from south of the county. Some said he'd gone to San Antonio to beg help from his brother-in-law, a judge with empty eyes and dirtied hands. Others said he never made it that far, that a group of wagon thieves had mistaken him for a mine runner and slit his throat beside the Pecos River. No one confirmed it. Ransom didn't ask. Josie didn't care. Dead or not, Harmon was done chasing her. And sometimes the cleanest vengeance wasn't the one you held in your hands, but the one you didn't have to take at all. One morning before the sun rose, Ransom found her at the edge of the cattle pens, coat pulled tight, boots thick with mud. She was staring out toward the tree line, hands tucked into her sleeves like she used to when she was still thinking of leaving. "I never asked if you'd stay," he said. "You didn't need to," she replied. He leaned beside her, arms crossed, hat pulled low against the wind. "I thought I'd die before I let someone close again," he said. "You didn't." "No." He glanced at her. "Do you ever miss what you left?" She thought about that. Thought about the marble floor of the Harmon estate, the polished silver, the corsets too tight to breathe in, the way no one called her by name unless it was to correct her. "No," she said, and that was all. The ranch mended. New men came to work. Cal's grave was marked by a stone carved in silence. He was ours. He fought. Josie helped Mags build a schoolhouse out near the bluff where the view stretched all the way to Elkhorn Ridge. They took in 2 orphan girls from the last raid, both of them too skittish to sleep indoors the first week. Josie taught them how to hold a gun before she taught them how to read. And slowly they stopped flinching when doors shut behind them. Ransom never spoke of the war he fought before her, the men he'd killed, the life he lived with no soft place to land. But he came home each night. And every morning he left coffee by her side of the bed before he saddled up. Sometimes that was more than enough. Sometimes that was everything. They were sitting on the porch one evening, watching the wind-pressed shadows across the grass. Josie had a glass of rye in hand, boots up on the railing, sleeves rolled. Her hair was longer now. She hadn't cut it since winter. Ransom said, without looking, "I keep thinking about that day. When you walked into the saloon. What about it? I knew you before you said your name." She turned her head. How? He sipped his drink. "Your eyes were the same," he said. "Same as that girl on the stairs. I remember thinking, if she ever runs, no man alive should get in her way." Josie looked out across the fields. "I wasn't running to anything," she said. He smiled, just barely. "You were. You just didn't know it yet." The sky turned copper, then violet, then the blue of a memory too deep to name. Josie leaned her head on his shoulder. And for the first time since the morning she tore through the Harmon estate gardens in a wedding gown stained with fear, she didn't feel like a fugitive or a fighter or even a survivor. She felt whole, not because the world had softened, but because she hadn't, and neither had he.